Welcome to Hiki-Goma. I guess this is kind of an odd setup and a kind of odd episode. I'm trying something new. I'm going to be interviewing someone today, I guess. That man is Cynga.
Yeah, hi, hello. Good morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever it is over there. But
We're in the
hi.
same. We're in the same time zone.
Oh yeah, true, true.
Oh, but the
I'm
audience isn't.
speaking to the audience and I'm spilling my spaghetti.
Oh, right.
Hi. Good. Greetings. Earthlings. Yeah, I don't want to get into. Okay. Hello. Hi. Hi. I'm Cynga. I'm a person who draws things on Twitter.com. I am what you would, I guess, call a Twitter artist. I like to post drawings of anime girls. And I draw some raunchy things, so be careful when you step into my profile. But the reason I'm here today is because aside from all that stuff that I draw, what I really want to do is create narratives, or like create stories, because that's the whole reason why I started as an artist to begin with. I'm here to give a little bit of amateur input. I am still learning. I'm still in school. I am finishing my university in a few semesters. It's nice to meet you all.
Yeah. Well, luckily, I only have like a tiny audience, at least with this channel currently. But yeah, so I basically for the previous couple of episodes of this podcast, I basically, similarly, we're both basically amateurs with different ends of things. I am like terrible at art. Like I don't do any art, so I'm on the writing side of things. Cynga, of course, is like purely on the art side of things. And so for the previous like couple of episodes, I basically just talked about like my process, basically going through and writing a manga. But I thought it'd be useful, and kind of an idea I'd had separately was basically just like talking to other people, of course, who'd had similar experiences just starting out. Particularly because I feel like once people sort of get to a certain level of advancement in a skill, their advice for beginners starts to be more and more separated from reality as they like narrativize their own origins, basically. And anyway, so I feel like there's like at least some value in people who are like still at kind of a low level, who have had some level of like, right, like Cynga, for instance, like you've recently made like a short manga, and obviously you've done other art, so you're not like literally at the very beginning, but obviously probably like, I don't know what you would call it, like semi-pro. Like you make money like from commissions and stuff,
Yeah, but that stuff is nothing related to
No.
the comic creation stuff. Although I do currently, I do have a current commission that is comic related, and it's a cute little comic. For the client's a woman, and she wants a comic for her boyfriend. So I guess this is my first time working on a commissioned comic, which the difference between this and every comic I worked on prior to this is that this comic that I've been given, I have guidelines and rules and a script to follow. It's different from what I'm used to. One of the perks of being an artist is that if you're an artist and you want to write, you basically have all creative control. It's one of the perks of being a person who illustrates an indie comic, basically.
Yeah.
Because you can decide on everything by yourself, and I think personally, that brings out your the most freedom in your work. Because art is freedom to me, and I think it's important to be able to express yourself the way you want to.
Yeah, well, it's one of the reasons I sort of transitioned from, I mean, very many reasons I kind of transitioned from film to manga is like, if I want to make, a short film, let's say, like I shot a short film in like 2019, that film I think the last edit got it down from maybe like 17 minutes. Now it's about like 12 minutes. That film cost about $7,000 to make Australian, and that was in university where we had access to like Ari Amira's, we had access to skylights. Like that's like at least $100,000 of equipment. It would cost probably an additional couple of $1,000s to rent. All of the crew, we got for free because they're just friends and stuff. But if you had to pay for those people, basically, if you had to pay for all of that stuff, that would balloon up to maybe, if I had to make that outside of uni, that'd be maybe $20,000-$30,000 at that kind of production level. And a lot of those people, you can't, that's like almost like a skeleton crew of like 15 to 20 people, and you can't skimp on any of those people. And if you do, you can jeopardize the entire production. And so going from that to like a manga where it's like, it's either one person, it's like a mangaka, it's a artist writer, or it's a writer and an artist, two people, and it's all just like you do it inside your house. There's no, the weather isn't gonna fuck you over, an actor isn't gonna like drop out or get sick, or the police aren't gonna show up because you're firing blanks and your producer didn't warn people in the neighborhood, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's so much more liberating, it just being a much more like small scale thing.
Yeah.
I actually forgot what you initially said. Sorry, I just kind of went on a ramble.
Oh no, that's a good point to bring up, because going back to the whole like uncompromised vision thing.
Yeah,
right? As an artist, right? It's nice to be able to not have to have to. This is an ideal situation, obviously, because like you as an artist, you still have to earn your money.
Yeah,
you still have to make yourself a bit, right? And
because we're talking about a situation not being under producers, or like almost like not like a Shonen Jump situation where it's like heavily regulated.
Outside of those situations, right? That nothing is stopping you, the average person, which means whoever I'm speaking to, the viewer, right? From working on your own thing on the side as a hobby, like drawing your own comic, because the most important step is always to take the first step, and it's important to at least try. It costs very little. All it requires is your time and dedication and your passion to create a short comic of your own, even if it's even if you're not great at drawing, it's still practice. And to me, any time spent practicing is not time wasted. It's important to at the very least try. For me, I work on graphic novels, and it's like anime inspired stylistically, but like I wanted to try other styles because I wanted to experiment a bit and have more fun as an artist. And I think it's been very nice to be able to finally draw some comics. So if anything, it's like taking a weight off your chest, because a lot of people don't feel like taking that first step to draw because they are like, what if I'm not good enough, or what if this doesn't come out the way I want it to. Realistically speaking, nothing's going to come out the way you want it to. It's never going to be perfect, but it will be nice to at least have something than nothing.
Yeah. Well, that echoes pretty much almost exactly what I've said in a lot of the previous episodes of this podcast, where it's, like a lot of people I've talked to creatively, and it's not like everyone's like immune, like pretty much everyone procrastinates to a certain degree, because the process is just like inherently, even if you're fully like cool with failing and like feeling like an idiot or whatever and being like terrible, even if you're cool with that, it doesn't make it like super easy. So but anyway, like I've met a number of people who basically they're in this weird like kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like they're kind of wanting to do stuff, and they talk a lot about wanting to do stuff, and they talk a lot about their plans. They talk a lot about their plans. They talk, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm reading about this, I'm reading about this. Oh, this seems good. This seems like a good genre. this genre is, doing well in media. I should get into this. I should get into this. And every time I talk to them, I'm like, hey, there's a number of people, not a single person, but hey, what's up? How's it going? Oh yeah, just I'm thinking of getting into this new genre. Oh yeah, so you're writing a new thing? Oh no, I'm just thinking of getting into it or whatever. It's like, oh, you haven't done anything basically. Completely worthless, yeah, compared to like literally just doing anything for like an hour, drawing anything.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing is that, like, again, compared to film, something again I really don't like about film in a way, or it's it definitely detracts from. Film is very difficult to practice in many ways because it requires so much, preparation, effort, time, money. Like writing and drawing are probably like maybe the two creative skills that are like have the lowest barrier to entry. I mean, both writing and drawing. If you have paper and a pen, obviously, you can do both of those. You can do both of those things, and obviously, comics are like the combination of those. And it is really bizarre thinking, obviously, that like all of whoever's favorite comics, manga, whatever, are all just like drawings on sheets of paper. And I know obviously that's kind of like a reductio ad absurdum because obviously animation's like that. But it is so simple like as a medium. It's so basic. Again, compared to something that's super complicated like opera or theater or film or whatever.
Yeah, it's the least demanding of the art forms to be able to like. It's not saying that it's not difficult or not hard work, but it's more like in essence, right? It's producing art, right? And it's in its quickest form, right? It's like writing and doodling, or drawing. It's like because drawing is like a very vast thing where like you could be doodling a like stickman, or you could be creating like the Mona Lisa, and there's a vast difference in time consumption between the two. But at the very least with drawing, the first setup, like initial like requirements is very low compared to something like animation where like when you compare a drawing versus an animation of a stickman, right? You only need one drawing of a stickman, but animations like a bunch of drawings of stickman, that have to move in motion, and you have to understand like where they are moving, like 10 principles of animation and all that stuff. And like obviously with art, there's also fundamentals to understand, but with it's still the one that requires the least initial investment.
Yeah. Well, even like buying drawing tablets, even like the more expensive drawing tablets, like a Cintiq or whatever, that might cost like $2,000 or something. But like again with film, it's like a prosumer camera is going to cost that much, plus lights, plus whatever crew, plus food, so on and so forth.
As a digital artist, right? So this is outside of the pen and paper thing, but like as a digital artist, right? My medium or like what I use to draw is a Wacom tablet, right? And this tablet has been with me for almost 9 years. So it's single-handedly the best $300 investment. Yeah. Because it's even then like $300 is relatively cheap, and it's like obviously this is like going back to the whole like there's like a variety, because like if you really wanted to be simple with like filming, right? It's not wrong if you like just pull out an iPhone camera and start filming.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like everything has it's like I would say, but even then like having some kind of a camera is still required for film. But for art and for like drawing in general, you can just like take a pen and pencil. I mean, not pen and pencil, pen and paper or pencil and paper and just start. And that's like incredibly cheap. You could get like a pencil for 40 cents. Yeah. And then like a sheet of paper.
Well, I think one of the differences with, because I agree, like obviously, you can. I mean, there are whole feature films, mostly kind of gimmick feature films, but there have been films that have been shot on iPhones or whatever, or weird, like on GoPros or whatever, and that are good. However, like with a Wacom tablet, which also I've had my Wacom for like 6 years now, I think. I bought that, 2016. With a tablet like that, you can be at the basically upper echelon of digital artists with that tablet for like $300 plus software costs, or if you or if you don't pay for the software, then zero. But with a $300 camera, let's say, you can't. It's kind of infeasible to reach certain heights with that, and then plus, for instance, film just has all of these other costs. Like, I can't. I probably spent, man, on my film probably at least $1,000 on food, just feeding the crew, at least, actually, because it's just like you got to feed 20 people, and you can't be. I don't mind. For instance, like, okay, I can be cheap on equipment because that's just equipment. I'm making that choice. But if people are working for you for free, and they're working like 12-hour days, or they're going till like 3 or 4 in the morning, like the last day of my film went super late or super early into the morning, you can't be feeding people. You shouldn't be feeding people shit food. So that there are just basically, I guess the point is that there are way, 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 way more barriers to entry with film. Still, I don't hate the medium or anything, but in terms of ability to practice it, the freedom you have over things, I hate the feeling of not being able to to pause and think and take my time with things. I can do well under pressure probably, but that feeling with film, right, where you have a first AD, you have a guy basically who effectively is going to have a heart attack constantly because they're constantly worried about the schedule. They're basically hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. They're the nagger on set. You basically get them just to nag you, everyone, hurry up, please. Stop wasting time. Please hurry up. We're an hour behind. So you're trying to balance the fact that you're making a creative thing. And it's something that you've spent a really long time. I've been in pre-production for probably a year on the film I made, at least actually more like a year and a half. So you're trying to make something super, as good as possible. You've got a lot writing on it. You spend a lot of time, building up to it. And then someone's constantly telling you, no, you can't take your time. You've got to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Where again, with comics, I know that that's obviously the case with a lot of magazines have crazy, crazy deadlines. Which again don't seem healthy. They're not good either. But at least with indie comics, you seem to be able to take your time and just be hey, I can just delete this, or I can just kind of come back tomorrow and be oh hey, that sucks.
with indie comics, it's you are your own director. You decide how things look, and it's all on your shoulders. It's through your hands that these stories that you create are brought to life, right? And I think that's the most liberating form of storytelling from a personal standpoint. You feel good when you're not you don't have to listen to an editor. And obviously it's not not having a second person's eye is a bad thing or anything, because it's you are working on your comic, right? But you don't have a specific person who's your editor. You could approach other people and just show them what you have as a work in progress, and they could be your second viewing eye. Some people, when I was working on my comics, I had some people take a look at stuff, and at least if you have a official editor and this is your job, if you can't really, it's a bit more difficult to say no, if you don't want to compromise your vision, but with an indie comic, it's if a friend gives you or a peer gives you advice that you do not necessarily agree with, you don't have to follow through with it. But at the same time, it's good to have that advice sometimes, because it can put things into perspective when you're working on the comic. It's with comics, it's one of the important things with comics is that you, I guess, plan, but that goes with everything, I would say. You plan your panels, you plan what moments are key, you plan how much space this character takes in the panel, what moments require the most impact, and etc. And at the end of the day, it's all you if it's an indie comic, which is why I've been not trying to because I already completed them. But I did 2 comics, and they are very short. They are just there for me to try and see where I am at, art style wise and skill wise, to put
Yeah.
things into perspective for myself as well. Because as a person who has been drawing for a very long time, I'm surprised that before these 2 comics, the last time I ever drew something remotely like a comic, like an actual comic, was maybe what? Let's see, when was that? 2013.
Right.
That's almost
yeah.
9 years, and it's like most of the time it's because for one, I'm studying, right? So it's difficult to work on it. But in all honesty, that is an excuse, because it's not like the time outside of school I was using it fruitfully,
Yeah.
I was playing video games and all that stuff. And here's the thing, right? I think it's important to mention also that I don't necessarily think playing video games or watching shows or watching films is a bad way to spend your time, because they are all mediums, and they are all forms of media which tell their own narratives. And even if you are playing a video game, you are still expanding your visual library.
Oh yeah. Probably Deus Ex is probably one of the most influential things on me, and that's a game.
Yeah. So time spent having fun is not time wasted.
Yeah. I put the caveat that a lot of people, I totally agree, obviously, with it's not optional in the sense that you need to have influences. You have to have media that you're passionate about and that you draw inspiration from, or otherwise you will be in some weird vacuum, I think, or you end up with this weird insular style where you're not, you end up trying to reinvent the wheel, and then there's basically instruction manuals out there. If it's like trying to make a film and you haven't seen Citizen Kane, or you haven't, you don't know a basic film convention. Anyway, but I think some people definitely, and I've done this where they can, as long as you're not consuming, as long as most of the media you're consuming isn't done completely passively or without exploration. If you're just playing an MMO for tens and tens of hours or something, then that's probably not a great use of time. I mean, that's probably just not a great use of time generally. I mean, I don't know if it brings you immense joy, I guess, but as someone who's probably, as a kid, I probably put at least 1,000, 2,000 hours into RuneScape. I can pretty comfortably say that was a waste of my time personally, but yeah.
For me, it's if the time I spend made me happy, it's fine. But the reason why I bring up the whole playing video games or watching movies thing is because that yes, it's okay to me. It does sound like a bit of a contradiction. To me, it's yeah, it's totally fine. You should be playing games. You should be having fun. You should have you should be giving yourself some form of TLC. And if that is going to expand your visual library at the same time, all the more do it. But at the same time, it's you have to also start working on your stuff at the end of the day. You can't be playing 24/7. And at a certain point, you do have to put these things that inspire you onto paper. 10 years ago, when I first started writing my story, this is a pitfall that I think a lot of people who just start out writing do, is that they take the first thing that they see, the first thing that comes to mind, and immediately just put it onto paper. When I was writing for my story, Aghast, right? The first thing that came to mind was Soul Eater, and another show I watched called Shakugan no Shana. And these two shows, when you make them have a love child, I think, I mean the premise was just, it felt like I was, the reason I bring this up is because when you take the first thing that comes to mind and you are just immediately looking at the thing to your left, right? Like you're going down a shopping aisle, you see a carton of milk. You immediately take a carton of milk and decide, and then you ignore everything in the milk aisle, right? Because for context, like those were the only two anime I had watched at the point of time.
Right.
You know, and I was already enamored with anime at that point. I was like, holy shit, Soul Eater is the coolest thing ever. Shakugan no Shana, that's cute. I like it a lot. The main character Yuji Sakai, he's like a boy, right? But he's not the one doing the heavy lifting in the narrative. OMG, you know, the girl is the one who's kicking ass and protecting him. And it's like, yeah, if those were the only two anime I have seen at that point of time, obviously that's new to me, you know. But there's probably a lot of shows that have done it differently, and it's important to expand your horizons.
I'm not sure if you've ever seen, there's a it's weird referencing like single tweets, but there's a tweet I've seen once which is like like man who has only ever seen the movie Boss Baby.
I love that tweet so much.
Watching his second film, man, I'm getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from this film.
It's fucking fantastic. I love that tweet so much. But it's that tweet is less of a meme than you think it is.
Yeah, that is basically true.
It's because when I first wrote my narrative, right, I was only thinking of Soul Eater at that point of time, you know, and my narrative, the story I wrote ended up just being Soul Eater, but I'm, you know, trying to make Soul Eater myself. At first glance, that sounds like nothing wrong. You know, it's like, yeah, obviously everything's derivative. Correct. But like, when you're only thinking of like drawing inspiration from one source, that's a big issue. So over the 10 years, it's like, going back to the whole thing about like playing video games and like watching more films and like going out of my way to read more stories and all that stuff. Read more comics, read more manga. My perspective on things changed a lot, and this is something that will happen to you as a person who just starts out writing. You're gonna like look back at your first draft, right, and either you're going to go, wow, I've come very far, right, or wow, I was really cringe back then, you know. And there's the only like silver lining with like having this like old stuff is that at least one, it's a starting point. Two, it puts your work into perspective, because like if there's a lot of change with it can help you like put things into perspective.
I mean, honestly, like with that, I will have that on like a daily basis. That'll be like, I'll write, you know, a little bit of like, either I'm drawing like a name or like storyboards, whatever, or writing a bit of a script. I'll be like, wow, that was challenging, but that was all good stuff. And I come back the next day and I'm like, wow, I am immensely spastic. That's the worst thing I've ever written. I'm glad I'm no longer like that. Time to write some more stuff. Next day, exactly the same thing. Yeah.
I wake up every day and I'm cringe.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to say, like, in terms of cringe, right, there's like, not only will the initial stuff be cringe, but you have to like actually like maximize cringe, basically, like in the early stage, maximize cringe and use it as like fuel for the journey, basically, because it's impossible to be posting or releasing early works without them being cringe in like some capacity. It depends what your tolerance for personal cringe is. Like, there are things but I'm always impressed by people who post, like, the people who post, I guess, like, derogatively call it, like, deviant art, kind of tier art. I'm always really impressed that they can do that, because I would do it, but it would be difficult for me to do, I think, like, to be not embarrassed by a certain, like, level of thing. But the people who can do that are ironically, like, the people who are putting out the worst art initially when they're just starting out. If they just continue doing that, then they will get the best fastest, which is the funniest thing. Like a guy I know from high school who would always just be drawing basically just anime, like manga stuff, like in notepads and stuff all the time, like during class. And I remember not like making fun of him to his face or anything, but just like my friends and I just being like, okay, that is pretty cringe. Like, teachers being like, what the hell is that? Like, oh, it's Naruto or whatever. Like this, or it's like, but then that guy's like amazing at art now. So it's like, great. That was like a totally necessary step, I guess, in the sense that he just had to like go through a period of just drawing shit basically, and not being embarrassed by it, and just like being like, that's cool now in retrospect. It's like, oh cool, you could just do that. You like didn't give a fuck. You didn't give a fuck what other people were thinking of that.
Yeah.
And then he's like really good now. So it's like, fucking hell. Like,
yeah, going back to it, whether or not you're an artist or a writer, right? Even if you think it's going to be cringe, right? Don't stop. Like, everything in retrospect when you grow is just going to be a little bit cringe. It's just a byproduct of growing up as a person, and it's important to be able to look at your past so that you can understand what position you are in right now. Cringe, right? At the very least, right, is the most like pure form of expression, because you quite literally do not care what other people think and you're still putting things out there. And I think at the very least, right, that deserves some level of respect, because when you now as you grow more self-conscious of yourself and your work, obviously you think more about what other people think of you and all that stuff, right? And then you have all these worries that are like you are carrying on your shoulders. But if that's preventing you from working on what you want to create, then you have to cast that embarrassment aside. You're not going to be a master when you start. You're not going to be the best writer ever when you begin. And it's important to be at least, right, put something out there, even if you feel like embarrassed, right? It's still better than not putting out anything, because it has to see the light of day to be understood. Immense respect to anyone who creates their own, like, I have a lot of respect for anyone who creates their own stories, because it's not easy putting that out. It requires a little bit of bravery to do so. Because when you put it outside there on the public forum, on a place as wild as the internet, right? It's up to scrutiny, it's up to criticism, and it's put out there. But like at the end of the day, it's going to help you develop. You take these criticisms and understand them. Even if you disagree with them, okay, whatever. But people who want to help you will give you valuable criticism, even if you feel like as in, okay, so with taking criticism, right, going back to the whole like art and creative writing thing, right, obviously you're not going to agree with what everybody says about what you've written, but it's at least going to give you some level of perspective. And I think there's a very good way I think there's a very clear difference between someone who's coming in and trying to like give you some genuine advice or pointers, as opposed to someone who's coming in telling you like, oh, this is shit. And it's like, well, tell me why. Because like,
I've found at least with like YouTube stuff, most comments are basically either positive or neutral, but like I've actually never like been that bothered by it. Like, if someone's just like randomly like, you fucking suck, it's like,
it's like okay, cool, thank you, random stranger on the internet, but that's not going to help improve my product.
Well, the ones that, but it's almost funny because people, I mean, I do understand, like, if you're, I mean, I don't know exactly how to, like, it is kind of like that walk, turn 360 degrees, walk away, brother, like, like, I do get if people are like, if you're maybe being like literally like targeted for harassment and you're getting thousands and thousands of comments like telling you to kill yourself or something, then that could, that's a bit different. But what's funny is like the comments that have ever like bothered me the most are like all the legit criticism ones, and they bothered me because they're true, because they're good criticisms, even if they're even if they're like a lot of them are just like nice and they're just like good good constructive comments. But even if they're mean, they not so much, bother is maybe not the right word, but they stick in your mind because they have some value. But then they actually just end up
Yeah, I
You know,
guess
or
I
they
guess
should
the,
end up helping you basically.
yeah, I guess the best way to put it, right, is that if a person just tells you you're like shit, right, it's like, okay, whatever, like, haha, funny internet comment. But if they're like, you're like shit, here's why, and you know why, and then you read it
Yeah.
and it's like, oh shit, he's right, and he's mean,
Yeah,
damn
yeah.
it. It's
Yeah.
like, that one's, it's like, yeah, that person, right, knows how to get to you, right? Because what
Yeah.
he's saying is fucking right, like,
Yeah.
and he put in effort. It's like, there's a difference, like, one is like, your shit, right? It's like, they didn't even put in effort to insult you.
Yeah,
Or
no,
like,
exactly,
to like,
yeah.
to
And
like
especially
pick
then,
you
like,
apart.
you just
Yeah.
go and look at their profiles and just be like, it's just so funny people, like, message you that. Like, it's, like, just so funny, like, seeing people where it's like, what compelled you to be like, you fucking suck, or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, not that I'm almost not offended, I'm just, like, really
what
curious,
made him
like,
this way?
what's the motivation? But, I mean, I kind of, there's a lot of
What
understandable
is the
things.
attraction?
Yeah, well, it's funny because those people are the people I kind of, you don't necessarily want them around you, like, in your personal life, like people who are out to, like, get you or something. But just to compare, like, a guy I really like, a guy I've worked with, let's just say, really like him, really nice guy, super nice guy, has, worked really well with him. But, for instance, like, I sent him the script for my manga Aegis. Long ass script, he took the time to read it. It's like 70,000 words, that's like, anyway, long read, really grateful for him to read it. And then I was looking for, and I said, like, give me everything you don't like about it. I'm really open to everything. Like, please don't hold back. And then he sent me back, like, quote, "This shit fucks and comes." I'm like, cool, but that's not, like, valuable to me at all, because you're just telling me it's, like, good, and I know that it has a bunch of problems. Like, that's the problem. If I thought it was great, and then someone else, a bunch of people came back to me also saying it was great, I'd probably get a boost of confidence. But or I'd be a little bit more certain in my belief. But if I know objectively, there are a number of, probably reasonably serious things that needs to change, which I've, like, subsequently changed, and then people are telling me, oh, this is great, no, this is all fine, don't change anything. It's like, no, that's actually the opposite of helpful, because you're basically trying to lead me. You're, like, sugarcoating poison sort of thing. And it's like telling someone that they're ready to, like, go out on stage, and they're, like, not prepared at all. Like, yeah, you should go up and do, like, a dance routine in front of the whole school, and you, like, suck at dancing or something like that, where it's like, that person is inadvertently going to get you to fail if you buy into what they're saying, basically.
Yeah.
I hate being in positions where you have to, like, not believe people. You have to be like, look, you're telling me something I really want to hear. Like, I really want to hear that this script is great, obviously. That would be a relief. However, I have to you're making me have to, like, resist the temptation, which you just don't. You really don't. You don't want to have to be resisting that, basically, because it can suck you into the fucking, not fixing serious problems, because you have a bunch of, like, yes men telling you that it's actually really good or whatever.
Yeah, like, so, like, going back to it, it's like, don't be afraid of criticism. Don't be afraid of the. I guess be a little bit afraid of the internet. Obviously, it's like, with the internet, it's like, it's a wild west. You don't want to be giving out too much information, but that has nothing to do with making a story. With a story, right? Putting it out there is, like, the number one most important thing. You could write the most, like, amazing motherfucking story, right, underneath your basement, right? But if it never sees the light of day, right, then no one's going to read it. It's never going to be acknowledged. No one remembers it. So even if you think it's cringe, even if you're nervous, just do it. If you're nervous about, like, criticism, it's fine. Everybody has to face it. Everyone receives criticism. Take it in stride. Don't be too worried about it. Don't get too hung up about it. Because at the end of the day, if it's, like, hurting you mentally, then, like, you might want to take a break or something, But, like, you want to, like, do all of these things healthily. When you create your story, you want to put it out in the internet and let people see it. You want it to be fulfilling for you at the end of the day. Because if it isn't, then, like, where's the fun in that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think most people who don't have any passion in the process will not really get like very far anyway, I guess, because you kind of have to have a certain level of like, you really have to be holding on to a certain kind of vision basically the whole time to really endure the fact that it's basically like a marathon, and you have to be really prepared for the fact that it is going to be a really long, like arduous process. I mean, you can break it up into small chunks or whatever. It can be done manageably, but it's going to still be a really long process. And so I think people who are either kind of like willy-nilly, like, oh yeah, I'll just kind of do this thing, I'll just make a manga or whatever, and then it's like, with the expectation that it's going to be easy, super easy, or it can be done really quickly, or they're going to have like overnight success, or they're going to have whatever.
Yeah,
They'll be disappointed like very quickly.
going
basically.
going to like putting going to like stuff like success and all that stuff is like, yeah, on like one hand there's the worry of criticism, right, and the worry of cringe, or like embarrassing yourself. But then on the inverse, there's also the one where you're telling yourself you might not be good enough, and you're worried about its success and all that stuff. So for example, for me, right, I'm a person who creates art on Twitter. I sell it, and all of my most popular posts, right, are either fan art or raunchy. And people, cause like for me, I want to bring this point up because I think it's not exclusive to just artists. I think writers also face this conundrum, right, where they are like, oh, this post isn't doing numbers, or oh, people aren't really reading this story, should I stop? Recently, with all my most raunchy posts, not raunchy, most popular posts, they are raunchy, or they are fan art, and when compared to like my indie comics, right, my indie comics get like a fraction of that, but there's still people in the comments, right, who are saying like, oh, I want to read more, and like even one of those comments, right, I think is enough to like make you a little bit happier and make you want to continue. So don't be super worried that it's not going to be super successful, because at the end of the day, you're not going to pump out a piece of media or writing or like a comic, right, one day, right, and then wake up the next and be like as famous as the man who created One Piece, Oda, or something. You're not gonna like become Kentaro Miura overnight, because like all of them took a long time to get to the place where they are. And where do you think why do you think that was? Because they started, I guess with this current episode of the podcast, it's like us as like amateurs, right, we want to tell you that like starting is better than nothing, right? And it's a sentiment that like it's easier said than done, because obviously we all have our reservations, we're all human, right? But just try your best, keep telling yourself to try, because you have to, like, don't just try, do it,
Well, and there's a good quote which is like, people overestimate what they can do in a day, but they underestimate what they can do like in a year. Where if you draw, and I know like even as like full-time mangaka, even like drawing maybe not full-time mangaka, but drawing a full page in a day is a lot for some people. Sure. I don't know exactly. It depends on the difficulty of the quality of the art you're doing, like how, whatever, a number of factors, but whatever. Even if you drew one page like a week for a year, that's like a one shot. That's like 52 pages. The volume over time of things is anything daily times by 365 is going to be a like pretty large number. Like I stopped drinking coffee. I was probably paying like $3 a day for coffee. I was like, okay, now I have like an extra $1,000 a year. I sometimes will just do, and I know like paneling or storyboarding, doing the name of a manga is, if manga is already difficult, then the name is sort of the really difficult part. I will sometimes just do 2 pages in a day, and that's it. But it's like, okay, well, that's like 60 pages a month. That's like, what, 60? I don't know, my maths isn't great. 60 by 12, 6 by 12, that's like 720 pages, I think, per year. It's like, okay, that's a pretty decent amount. That's like 2 pages a day or whatever.
Yeah, that's still that's a lot,
Yeah,
Yeah, like uh with creating a comic, right? It's like it's another reason why it's so important to start is because like when you start, right, you will be able to gauge yourself. When I first
yeah, yeah,
before I drew my comic, right, I drafted an entire comic and I thought, well, this seems like it'll be a piece of cake. But then once I started like doing stuff like adding colors, shading
yeah,
and etc., right, it made me realize, right, how much more how much more taxing it actually is compared to how
yeah,
I initially thought it was. And this is like something that goes more for the art side of creating a story, right? Because like with writing, I'm not really sure if there's an equivalent to that for writing. Like, do you like write and then like realize like, oh damn, this is more difficult than it has to be. You know,
yeah. There's not as much of like there aren't as many discrete steps, I guess, in the sense of like coloring. Is its own kind of arduous step on top of another step. Writing is more of like holistically difficult, I guess. You know what I mean? It isn't just
yeah,
as discreetly broken into like elements in the way that drawing can be, I think.
yeah. Starting is important also because it allows you to gauge yourself, and then like that will be a valuable future experience. It's better
Yeah,
to start small, and then like because like when I did my first comic, right, I actually went out and made went out of my way to make it smaller than what I was hoping to do in the future. And
yeah,
even then it was like, oh damn, this is pretty difficult, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So
No, for sure. Yeah,
it's good to help you because like it's better than like one day you like, oh, I'm gonna start with my biggest project ever. It's gonna be my magnum
mm,
opus. And then like you start, right, and it's like, oh damn, this is really, 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 really hard. Because you didn't have any prior experience
yeah,
to allow you to plan better, to make
yeah.
compromises,
Well,
to
I'm
do
super
all that.
duper glad I like didn't do that because yeah, the first thing I wrote, like I'd obviously made like I made smaller like film projects. I say smaller, but they were still like a lot of effort, a lot of money, whatever. Um, Smaller projects than a huge sprawling manga thing. But that was going to be the first thing I produced, and then kind of not exactly at the last minute, but it wasn't like according to plan. Basically, end of last year, I was like, yeah, I'm going to start producing this, and I was like, that seems like a bad idea. Like all of the advice I'm hearing, and just intuitively, that like, why would I want to do this first? Like I know like one of the things that happened when I like made a film I directed is I had worked on other people's films. Like I had like shot a film on film. I shot 2 films. I had like edited a bunch of stuff. I'd been making my own YouTube stuff. I'd helped other people write and stuff. Like I'd done a lot of different things, but I didn't really have experience like directing. And again, like when I was on set, I really hated the fact that it was, there was tons of time pressure, and it basically meant that I actually didn't really get a good chance to really like direct that much. I was having to put out a lot of fires, like almost producing related. It was kind of a shit show, a little bit. I was just doing a lot of stuff, and I didn't actually have a lot of time to really like work with the actors. And really, only by like the end of like the 4th day, like the last day of shooting, was I actually like, yeah, I think I'm actually starting to get the hang of this, and then it's over. And so I realized, right, I'm like, wait a minute. If I try to make my magnum opus first, I don't want that to be like I don't want to be learning on the job for like a thing that I'm trying to work at my maximum capacity at. You don't want to be like making amateur mistakes like on the most important thing you're going to make, in your life currently. So I'm like super glad I went away and have made 3 shorter manga projects, and I also it's sort of in slight production kind of limbo right now, but another I guess probably shorter, what would you call it, lower stakes manga project to me that I spent actually a number of months like developing before going back to Aegis, like my main project. And yeah, like if it's crazy because like yeah, if I had gone ahead with just starting it like a year ago without at least working like my way up from I did like a 17 page project, another 17 page project, 24 page project. Then I storyboarded and wrote for like a 45. Actually, I can't remember what it is. 45, 50 page project. Yeah, if I hadn't done those things, I would have been completely screwed. Just as a point on like basically real life testing, which is again something I've actually. It's funny that this is kind of chance. Like we didn't plan to talk about this, but I have actually ended up talking about this a lot in previous episodes. Is this problem of like why you basically have to test? Something I probably haven't mentioned before, but it kind of illustrates this really well. Is I was like I knew that like obviously as a writer, hiring an artist was going to be like a step that was involved, but in my brain I was like, well, I'm happy to pay these people like pretty decent rates. They should be happy to work for those rates. They're reasonable. They're industry standard. And people are going to be like chomping at the bit. They're really going to want to work with me, or they're really going to be into the project. It'll be easy. Like that won't be a problem. I'm not even considering this a problem. And then it was like, oh no, it's actually completely different. Like I have to actually message a lot of people, and it takes a lot, like actually quite a bit of time to get people on board. People are kind of weird and flaky, or people kind of say yes and they say no, or they take ages to get back to you or whatever. That actually ended up being this whole, I wouldn't call it an ordeal, but it took, I didn't even consider it to be a problem. And then it ended up being a whole thing I had to create like a methodology around. Like I had to eventually I was having to message a X number of people a day. And like I had a script, and I had, like I had to really, it was a process I actually had to really refine. I'll probably talk about it in like a future episode, just like what that involves. It's not crazy, but it's just like, it just ended up being way harder than I like anticipated it to be. And I wouldn't have been able to obviously know about it, because in theory it kind of makes sense. Oh yeah, why would this be hard? But it's like in reality there are just so many factors that actually led to it being one of the things that took the most time. It's actually, I think, one of the most annoying steps. Now it's kind of fine because I have a few people I've worked with, and I have more, I guess, like connections there or whatever. But at first, yeah, huge nightmare, and I had no idea like how to go about doing it or whatever.
Yeah. To reiterate, it's like why you should start. One, I know reasons you should start. One, if you don't start, then it's not gonna be out there. Two, don't be afraid of criticism. It's just going to happen. Three, don't be afraid of like success, because it's going to take time. Four, it's necessary to test to understand the position you're in. So for me, it's like just now I mentioned, it's like the story I've written, it's like it's been 10 years since I started like working on it, right? It's changed a lot already, and like it's just something that happens as you develop what
you would want it to change over 10 years.
Yeah.
Like if it didn't change over 10 years, that would be a little concerning.
Yeah, so it's another thing, like don't be going, the reason why it's brought up is like don't be afraid of change. Like your story is not going to be the same way it is, and like at the same time eventually it has to reach a certain point where you understand your narrative enough or know what you want. Because at the start, like the reason why it's changing so much is because you're not necessarily too sure what you want to do with the story. But as time goes on, things will fall into place better. They are like falling pieces of a puzzle that like built upon. You get a Jenga tower, right, or something. I don't know what kind of like
what's the analogy?
I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that things will fall into place. Naturally, the more that you work with this piece of art that you're creating, your things will develop by themselves. With you at the helm, you're just going to understand what you're creating more and more, and that's it's a good thing, to have some level of change. But do not take too long either, because everyone has a limited amount of time on this planet, right? And
I think we both sort of because I think you probably had, I think I started, I almost called Aegis August. I think I started Aegis in like maybe 2014, like very early inception of the idea, but more like 2015. And that took me up until basically 2020 to start seriously working on it. And then only now in the last like maybe 3 months have I had anything actually produced from it. But where are you at with Aghast? Like, what kind of stage of production is that at?
One, character designs. Two, I know how I want to start. I know what characters are involved. I know how it should end. I know which characters should be introduced. When and where and why. It's more the middle part where it's like, how do we get there in the first place? Because it's easy to think of key moments in your narrative, but it's a lot harder to think about how you reach that point in a story.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I want this to happen. Then it's like, okay, how? And then you have to think a lot for that.
Yeah.
Because you're stringing a bunch of hows to a bunch of key moments. And each of them, they will influence one another in the narrative.
Yeah. One of the things that concerns me a little with like the stuff I've done, it's hopefully not too big a problem, but there are sort of there are things I've kind of like planned, some of which are more locked in than others, if that makes sense, in the sense of like, I don't have necessarily like an exact ending. I know roughly what is going to happen conflict-wise, like where certain things are going to be in kind of the state of the world. But sometimes it's like, I know that once I'm at that stage, like that conflict, like there will be a conflict there that we'll achieve. That the story will get to a certain point where we're like in a certain kind of end game. And that end game could end in a number of different ways, and they're all interesting, and I'll just kind of pick the one at that stage that I think is the most interesting. Then others are like, other things in the story are more like, this has to happen in order for this other thing to happen, and it's kind of like, it's like Cynga, where, things are, particularly, they're dependent on one another. If you pull one out, then the whole thing's going to collapse. But then other things are like, I've, even since writing the first episode, I've basically mentally just deleted certain scenes from like later in the series, some of which I thought were going to be there 100%. Oh, that has to happen. And then now I'm like, nah.
That has happened also, because going back to the whole like your story will change thing, right? Like initially I had a lot more characters, like so many, right, that I don't think I myself as a human being could even have kept count.
Right.
And, that's a bad thing, because it's like you have so many things to micromanage, right? And like, unless you're like this, especially because it's like, it was my first attempt at a narrative, right? Obviously you're not going to be good enough to balance everything unless you're like basically a god tier writer from the very get-go on your first try. So initially I had a lot of these characters, right? But as the story changed and progressed, I realized that they had a lot of redundant roles that they had filled in, that other characters filled in. So it became more likely that I combined these characters, and they ended up having a little bit more depth, because they are now basically two characters that I initially had planned turned into one.
Yeah. And that's like a very natural process with story writing. Like, you often hear about scripts where, initially one character was actually two different characters, or even one character became two characters, like the melding and dividing of people. Man, what was I going to say? The thing I found, because I'm in kind of an interesting spot, I guess. What I'm writing at the moment is I basically have added like a scene to the sort of near the opening of Aegis, that's really, now that I think back on it, it's like shocking I didn't have it, because it's like so integral now. It's actually not, conceptually, it's actually not that big of a change, but it basically sets up the narrative effectively. It's like quite an important scene, and I had like a certain idea of that. It's this thing I'm testing out where I'm just not writing a script at all. I'm just going straight from like beats, like I want, this has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen, like story beats of the scene, straight to the drawing stage, like just drawing a really, really rough, like stickman storyboards, basically. And what's happened is like, and I know this happens to a certain degree with just writing generally, but there's a certain degree to which when you're really having to think about what a character is actually like seeing before them, like when they're actually in the scene and they're, you know, experiencing a certain event, let's say, that it really makes you focus almost empathetically on exactly what their emotional reaction would be. And it just ended up being that it's happened before when writing, but it really highlighted this for me, like the necessity to get to as complete a stage as possible as quickly as possible, because my whole appreciation of what the main character would be feeling and doing in this scene was just completely different as soon as I just even in like stick figure form, as soon as I just like drew the setting, I was like, oh no, they're gonna have a completely different emotional reaction to this event that's happening. Now that I'm like seeing this, like it's very clear that my planned idea of what they'd be, you know, thinking and feeling, whatever, is not correct, because when you're planning things and you're planning a number of scenes, you're planning story events, you're very removed, I think, like emotionally. You're really thinking about, you know, obviously you can be thinking about character motivations, but it's very hard to like visualize yourself really concretely in that scene with all the minutia of the scene, you know, the setting and details and so on. It's very hard to, you know, visualize yourself with the minutia multiplied by every single character in that scene. And then do that for every single scene in the script. It really, I don't think it's actually possible. And so then when you go to write these scenes, when you go to draw these scenes, rather, you really will sometimes notice, wait a minute, like, wait, what? With this character, if he's standing in front of this other guy and he says this, he's really going to have a reaction to that. And that actually now needs to be in the story and so on and so forth. And then it changes further. So at least with manga, to kind of summarize that, I've just tried to basically get to this storyboarding stage as fast as possible, because I know that like I can plan, oh, there's going to be this scene and they're going to do this, and I'm going to put the character in that scene, and they might have a slightly different emotional reaction. They might be, it might just be slight little, you know, additions, or it could actually be like, fuck, I like totally misjudged. Now that I'm seeing this, I'm realizing that their emotion is going to be completely different, or actually the even like the logistics of the scene don't even make sense, and actually it needs to be blocked differently, or whatever. Any number of things. Inherently, it's hard to describe, because inherently you won't be able to foresee what it is that you can't see until you've actually like done the scene.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's again, you know, you have to do it first to understand, to know what you're doing. Yeah.
When do you because speaking of like just doing it or whatever, like when do you plan to start creating a cast?
You see, this one is a tough question, because I actually gave my friends a deadline, and
oh really?
It was a joke deadline, right? So if I say it here, it'll sound really funny. But I said, okay, see you guys in 12 years time.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was a joke deadline, because I was like, there's no way I'll know when I will start. Because these kind of things is like, for me, I think it's like when you feel like starting, you're starting. You'll start.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously, and like you just kind of nag yourself at the back of your brain. It's like, hey, you start. You know, and like eventually you'll reach the point. It's like you it's a call to adventure, right? You like just like are compelled to do it. You know, you can't like, you shouldn't really be rushing yourself. If you feel you're ready, and you'll start. So that's why I've been doing smaller scale projects, because it's like it's not wise to start with your magnum opus. You know, you should try smaller things first to understand the position you're in first. You know, I drew 2 comics, and each one had a different purpose. The first one was to see how it would feel to draw something action-oriented. And the second one was to see whether or not I could do something a little bit more simple. Because you see, it's like each comic that I did, one after another, kind of built upon each other. So the first one was like, oh, in the future I'm going to draw these like kaiju battles in the narrative I'm writing. Then I should try to draw a kaiju battle. You know, and then it was like 20 pages of illustrated colored kaiju battles. And that after that, what I learned was that it's really difficult to do a comic by yourself. You know, it takes a lot more time than you think it is. It will be, you know. So you have to So after that, when I started on my second comic, I was like, okay, I want to try something that's simpler. But at the same time, with the kaiju battle comics, like, what's the thing with it? There's not a lot of narrative. Like, it's totally silent. Where like the only words that are present in that story was sound effects. So everything was told visually, right? So now the inverse had to happen, where it's like eventually when I'm creating my story for August, I'm not going to just do visuals. Like, there has to be dialogue, there has to be a certain level of captions, at the end of the day. So the second one was me trying to see how I could tell a story, how I could tell more like it's a focused narrative compared to something like a kaiju battle. Kaiju battle, like, in the entire comic, right, there's only one page, right, that I used to tell some form of like to give some form of context and backstory. But with the with the second comic I created, it was more narrative focused, because like I said, like, you want to experiment and you want to learn from your experience. You want to do something different. You want to see whether you can do this and whether you can do that. And with the second comic, that's what ended up happening. One, I made it simpler because I realized that it's not realistic for me to put so much detail and effort into it, unless like that's going to be my full-time dedication. Because remember, I was making these comics in school. So the first one was like that ate an entire chunk of my semester and like my time for other modules, and it was very difficult to be able to do it myself, because I did have help from other people to fill in flats. If not, it would have never been feasible to complete it by myself. But then the opposite end of things happened, where I created this second comic, and it's like it's a lot simpler, and cause of that, it was a lot less taxing for me, and that allowed me to focus on the narrative. And it's also because the first comic, I didn't really think about the narrative. I just wanted something cool, but the second one, I was like, okay, this time, because in the future I am going to write for a story that I'm creating, so it's important to be able to see how good see whether or not I'm in a position to be able to tell a story. So then it with August, right, I feel like I want to do a few more comics first, before
shorter comics.
Shorter comics, because in fact, like, the second comic is part of a larger narrative, so that could be my testing bit.
Because that's interesting with because I had a very similar experience with also making, I guess I've technically made 3 shorter comics, or written them rather, and storyboarded, where I had a similar thing, where the first one I made was and this is like, I never made like any manga before, way too complicated story-wise, just trying to fit like way too much shit in. Like, maybe it would make sense as a short film, but as a comic, it just doesn't make any sense in terms of breathing room. It's not really like comprehensible, really. It doesn't convey. And these are all fine. Like, these are really valuable mistakes, effectively. The second one I make is much simpler, but still it's too esoteric, basically. It's also like a silent comic, no dialogue. Because
at that point of time, that was your first one, right?
Yeah, that was
see?
Yeah.
It goes back to that.
I made 2 silent ones. I think the second one's better, but it's still not really. I think it doesn't even kind of reach the benchmark of actually like working, really. It was still super valuable. Like, the problem, ironically, is that I spent a lot more time there thinking about like paneling and movement and stuff, and I think it's a lot more effective in terms of like pacing and things like that. Like, I think I use things like page turns and so on like much more effectively. However, it's still, I know that like a dialogueless comic is kind of like a hard thing to start with, obviously, but the one I made after that, because I was like so frustrated with like, I'm a writer and I can't even like make a story that works, what the hell,
Yeah.
I just made something that went back like way back to basics. Like that's like the Constellation one. I don't know if you. I can't remember if I've sent that to you. I haven't. Annoyingly, with the ones I've sent to competitions, I'm like can't release them publicly yet, and they're kind of vague about when they announce the results of them or whatever. But by the third one, I was like getting a clear message of like I should just really make the narrative really simple, and then that's what I did, and then it works, and it's not something I'm like super duper. It's not the most revolutionary like story in the world, but that was like kind of a necessary like really slowing down to focus on like this is a problem. Yeah,
it's a necessary step to try to start smaller, because starting big is going to be a lot more. The consequences of starting big and like not being able to do it is going to take a lot more of your time and effort compared to starting small and failing. It's always better to start small, and don't overestimate yourself.
Yeah. Even like when I've made like previously like very long YouTube videos, for instance, I would have had a much better time, like 4-hour videos. I would have had a much better time making something slightly shorter, reflecting on that, and then making something much longer. And it would have taken me, I probably could have gotten away with making like maybe like a 30-minute video, then making that 4-hour video, and I probably could have done it faster than just making the 4-hour video, because I would have had whatever like experience making that still long but shorter video or whatever. Like you'll probably end up, if you start with shorter projects, you'll actually in the long run end up being probably faster and or just better than people who start with the huge magnum opus first or whatever. What's like your, I guess, like planned, I guess, like kind of what's like the scope of the project in terms of like how long is it going to be, like how long do you think you're going to spend
with
making it, sort of thing, with a Ghast? Yeah.
Okay. That one I'm not super sure, but there's the second comic that I worked on is part of a larger story, and that one I have a better gauge of what I want to do and what kind of things happen and what I want to finish, because it is a shorter story with lesser things to complete, and it's like far less grand on the scale compared to what I plan in the future, because it's like like I said, you have to, it's better to start small and like see audience, see if you can do it in the first place. And with the shorter story, my scope is that I plan a maximum, like a hard maximum of 10 chapters at the pace I'm going, because there's not too much that I want it to do. And if things come things come to it, then it will be just a little, I guess. Ideally, I want it to be 10 chapters, and the furthest I am willing to go is 15. And currently right now with it, it's like scope wise, it's like the first chapter that I released was the stinger. That means it's like there to like, I call it stinger because it's like, I'm not sure if it's a term that's actually used.
No, that's a term that's used for like trailers. Like 15-second kind of trailers. Sort of
because like it's supposed to serve the same function. It's supposed to like poke your audience, leave an impression, and that's what the first chapter I made was supposed to be. And after that, I've been looking at feedback and responses, and so far it's all been like, I want to read more, or I'm intrigued. So I'm like, okay, so that means at the very least, this comic in particular is doing something. People actually like it enough to want to see more. So I'm at least doing something right.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's like so valuable as well, even just like from a confidence perspective of like, oh, yeah, this isn't like terrible. This isn't so terrible that people like refuse to like gaze upon it or something.
Yeah, especially because if I'm starting on something small and something this small can garner a little bit of interest, right? Obviously, that's gonna feel good. It's gonna feel like you're doing something right at the very least.
I am really. I'm kind of considering this as like kind of the second stage, I guess, of like I don't know how many stages there are, but like it will be a fundamental shift effectively when I can release the first chapter of Aegis, which I'm kind of not that it's done, but I'm sort of going to produce. Oh, I say we, the artist and myself. We're going to produce, I guess, maybe the first 70 plus pages, like internally, like just for us, in kind of a rougher form, just to make sure that when I release the first chapter, it's kind of it's within a wider context. Like I know that I'm not just going to release it and then want to alter things, or just because I've planned enough stuff, I just don't want to screw it after this long. But we've done actually a decent amount so far, probably enough to actually release something. But you know what I mean? The reason I'm holding off, for instance, is because I recently realized that I should cut like the first, after drawing some more of the name, I realized I should actually cut the first like 6 or 7 pages of what we've done so far, and that's even after doing many drafts over multiple years, really. Coming to probably having like 100 different openings, 100 different like variations, subtle and major. Anyway, long story short is like I am really like having to resist just releasing it. I know it's like the best decision in the long run. It's the best decision for the story. However, having to resist the temptation to release it and actually get some like, please, wider public, is this shit? Like, is this actually something that people respond to? Is this just like, it needs to be like validated basically to some degree.
It helps to have an audience that you've already garnered in the first place to help you, because like for me it's like I had a bunch of followers already to begin with, because it's like if you're putting this out randomly, right, chances are not a lot of people are going to find it by themselves, because the internet is a big place.
It would take you longer over probably more chapters, for sure.
So it's it's important to make some connections, to help garner an audience and spread your work, to at the very least like get it out there and have people look at it so that they can you can see if they are interested in it or not.
Yeah, true. Although I mean, some people do just drop like on Medibang or whatever, like a one shot that's just like
if you're
insane, or they've spent like a crazy amount of time.
If you're like really good, you will just simply
I almost feel like that is like kind of a way to go about it. Like, it's funny what we were talking about before with like the expecting success immediately or whatever. Like, I'm kind of really glad, weirdly enough, like I was gonna say with YouTube stuff, for instance, like I did YouTube stuff for quite a while, mostly just for fun, probably from about 2010 onwards. Hilariously, like making fucking like Minecraft Let's Plays and shit, doing like StarCraft 2 like commentary, just doing a whole bunch of shit, and then eventually doing film stuff, and then that wasn't really successful for a little while until I started doing like video essays, and then even then that's like not even like especially successful in like the grand scheme of things, but that was still effectively like basically 0 to like a big jump up for me. And so, funnily enough, like going back to like, to be fair, like with this podcast, I'm not expecting this to like, it doesn't make any sense for it to even like have views or subscribers initially, because like inherently with what I was saying, like I haven't really put enough stuff out to be, it kind of relies on like being known, and that's kind of like a long-term play, of course. But it's funny, like I'm so not bothered ostensibly by like going from like 13 or 14,000 subs to like 20 or some shit, or I'm like, cool. It's just like starting over again or whatever.
And it's like, starting from round zero.
Yeah, but it's cool because it's just like, it'll just be like a long-term thing. Like, if it's obviously don't just put out shit for fucking years or something, but if it's like reasonably improving over time, like what am I, you know what I mean, like you should just expect it to like, anyway. That can just be a thing where over time you can just go from 0 to I don't even know what point I'm making. There's some kind of point in there to be gleamed maybe.
This podcast is like pretty candid.
Yeah.
with
You know what I mean? Because it's like I feel like you don't necessarily
like
you benefit from, for instance, like I'll be eventually like I've put off advertising anything like on my main channel, which by far has like, I mean, the comparative viewers to everything else is like crazy high compared to everything else in terms of ratio. But I sort of delayed promoting anything else because I want to wait until it's like, hey, I'm back, and here's the first chapter of this thing. Here's the first chapter of Aegis. I'm not like updating you for like some tiny baby thing or something. It's like I'm back and I've got a thing it's like you call it like an excess of value. You know, like, hey, here, and it's for free as well. I'll release it for free. The first chapter, I mean. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like you come back. It's like I'm gonna wait for like the best advertising tool I have, you know, for that first chapter, and that will be like a huge boon. Like that'll be really that'll be very beneficial to me, I'm sure, compared to nothing. But it's not as if you don't obviously need to have like an established audience. If it is good enough, I believe eventually it will float to the top.
Yeah, it just helps. Yeah, it just helps to have a pre-established audience, and it's like if you because for us in our situations is because we've been doing other things for a long time already.
Yeah, exactly.
But for you, if you're a viewer, right, who's got nothing online yet, right, then that's where you start, because that's when that's your starting position, and that's when you start to develop an audience. You know, so
and at least we're like we both have like like follower bases that are at least adjacent to what we're doing. Probably yours more so than mine. I mean, because you just do like illustration stuff, and then this is like it also like I don't even know what you call like meme creation on Twitter. It's a weird like subgenre almost.
It's shit posting.
Shit posting, semi-professional shit posting.
My profession is to say meeting press 5,000 times on Twitter. That's what they know me as, the press master.
The press master, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we haven't even addressed the fact that I'm talking to like a kaiju with giant titties or whatever.
Her chest isn't that big.
It's not that big. Damn.
Yeah,
I can't see the model because it's sort of a Lovecraft situation, right? It's too powerful to.
Yeah,
you know,
it's not showing.
My head would explode if I saw it. Kind of thing.
For me, it's like my work is adjacent to what I want to create, so it kind of helps, you know, because like my fan base. Or like my follower base, they are already expecting something similar, and they do not necessarily mind that I create something else, as long as it's still art. You know?
Yeah. It's not like we both got famous. Sorry, why did I say famous? It's not like we both got like any amount
base,
of follower base from, you know, I don't know, posting like gardening tips or something, and now we're like, hey, we're making manga or something. I mean, I guess yours is probably yours is probably closer than mine is, but at least mine is still like storytelling, writing.
Yeah, it's still related.
It's more related than like gardening tips at the very least.
Yeah, so
hopefully.
So going back to it, like that's the like from a micro position, right? It's like even the smallest things, right? You could share, you know, to build an audience, because anything posted online is gonna benefit you from a reach standpoint. Example, like I'm working on a comic and all that stuff, but I like to post like character designs and like the design process to get people invested or like excited to see what's coming next.
I think artists definitely, at least with manga, they have an easier time with that than writers probably.
Definitely.
I've tried to fill the void with that, at least with this podcast, by basically just creating shorts from the podcasts I've done, basically as content effectively. But the only other problem is like because you can't really post like script excerpts, you can't really post you know, like like the storyboards of the manga, because they're like terrible and not, you know, they're not really valuable, and also because they might just be spoiling stuff in the future. So then you're really limited just to posting the artist stuff. So I'm imagining like in the future that would be more like probably like artists I think have a bit of an easier time just being able, and since they're the ones like creating the actual material itself that people are consuming, it's a lot easier to create fan art just to kind of boost people your profile or whatever, or just draw draw whatever like even posting like warm-up sketches that are like related to the manga or whatever comic. It's a little bit easier I think to have exposure, at least in the initial stage. However, writers have if you have the means, I guess, have the ability to manage multiple projects at the same time, which is something that's kind of the benefit I saw, at least, was like, I mean, I was probably never going to go into art, but I did kind of consider briefly or reasonably seriously, like, okay, well, I want to make this. Is it actually feasible at this stage that I get super good at art while also trying to write this story? And I kind of went, rather than just like hiring someone to work with me, and I went, no, fuck that. I totally respect people who do obviously choose to like go the full art route, but at that stage I was like, yeah, no way am I going to get good enough at art. And also definitely the right call, because the writing is hard enough. I actually don't even know how the fuck people like even be mangaka.
Art is one of those things where like it varies for everyone. Like there's some people I've met who are like they started drawing stickman, right, and then within like 3 months they were almost reaching my level already, and then like by like 6 months they were already like gods, and it's like, and it's not even that it's just talent, because like they still had to put in the hard work to start, and develop their skill, and like it's just different from some people for everything, because like with art it's a more like I'm not sure what the word is, but it's like you kind of like got the gut feeling or like the talent, right, when you draw. It's like some people can draw, some people cannot draw, and it's going to be quite difficult for a person who's to different people have different rates of improvement and progression. And if you are a writer, right, and see that like the art thing's taking a little bit too long, right, then it's better to just have it on the side, if you have the time on the side, just do it anyway, but if it's taking up too much time and you have no time for it, it's better to concentrate on your strong skills, your strong suits.
Yeah. I mean, I think the position is at least in my case, the actual complexity of the writing was kind of the biggest problem. Like, I imagine that there are, well, no, for certain there are. I really doubt. I guess not even. This is actually as kind of a bad thing, but I doubt that there would be that many manga that people make, at least I guess in the indie sphere. I don't really know exactly what, how much preparation goes into certain like professional things, but the amount of research that I did was pretty bonkers, not gonna lie. And so with that, plus I guess with where I learned Japanese, I shouldn't say learned in the past tense, learning, because I'm still very bad at it, but that could not facilitate time-wise basically doing art stuff. But if you had like a simpler story that, for instance, was more I don't want to like shoehorn it to anything, but let's just say it was more like action-based, or it was more even just movement-based, more art, it relied more heavily on the art, and the story was simpler, let's say, then yeah, for sure you could probably put more time into that. But I think I made the right assessment that like, oh yeah, this is going to require a lot of research. This is going to require a lot of time, like planning. It's a pretty complicated, not necessarily again in a good way, but it's at this point still very complicated in terms of just the number of characters, number of interweaving things. I don't know, the sort of thing I'm going for, like thematically or something. It's one of those things where it's embarrassing if I don't pull that off, so it's kind of kind of motivating a bit. You know what I'm like, oh yeah, it's super complex. And if it comes out and it's just like shit, then that's kind of embarrassing. So Yeah.
Yeah, like with all this stuff, it's like I'm also not like say like an experienced writer also. Like for me, it's like inadvertently when you create comics, you have to write 4 comics. You know,
Yeah.
so it just happens to be it's like happenstance that like I end up having like some form of like writing experience. You know, even if it's like minuscule. With like someone who's purely dedicated to writing, I guess it's more difficult, you know, to be able to start something like art.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it goes both ways, definitely. I mean, also, I kind of made the, like, kind of what we were talking about before, where I kind of made the assessment as well that I would rather be good at writing. Not that I think I'm good at writing, but I would rather be good at writing and have shit
Artist.
art, but not the other way around. I would not want to be a good artist who could not like tell a good story.
Yeah, because at the end of
Yeah.
the day, yeah, we still want to tell stories.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how difficult do you think that a Ghast will be to write compared
Incredibly
to like
difficult
your current?
compared to
Incredibly
what
difficult.
yeah, because it's
But
very
as in,
daunting.
do you think it will be inherently difficult or just
I
based
mean,
on like current ability?
I think it's based on my current ability, but also because like for me, I don't think writing has ever been easy for anyone. You know, unless you're
No,
like
sure, yeah.
unless you're like insanely talented and know what or like know the ins and outs of what you're doing. Like I'm still an amateur, you know. So like compared to someone who's like got seasons, years of experience and like a ton of like work under their belt, you know, obviously it's not gonna be as stellar, you know.
But what do you like foresee being like the biggest hurdles with it?
Actually the art part of it.
Okay, right.
Yeah, because the after doing that kaiju battle comic, it made me realize how much effort it is to actually make a comic. You know?
Yeah.
So it made me a lot more conscious about like what I'm creating, you know, and like the amount of time you will take. So like at first I was like worried about like presentation, right? But now I'm more worried about how much effort it would take to like if I'm even able to like will I burn out by then or not? Because like by the end of the 20 pages, right, I did feel a little bit burnt out, you know, and like yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I probably have to get used to it before I do more of it, you know, because like when you're just starting out, it's like daunting, you know, but like if you get used to it, I'm sure it will be a lot less difficult.
Yeah, I mean, the first time people go to the gym, the first 2 weeks they get muscle soreness basically, and that puts a lot of people off. They think that the rest of the time at the gym is going to be constantly, oh, I do bench press and then my arms hurt for 3 days, or I do squat, my legs hurt for 3 days. But then after 2 weeks, that basically goes away. Unless if you do some very specific new exercise. Like I was recently just doing there's like a very tall staircase near where I live, and I was just going, just doing circuits of that, and like my calves fucking are like killing me right now. Like every time I stand up, I'm just like, ah! Like,
oh my god,
it's just like killing me. But that's obviously because of, you know, anyway. Long analogy being that like after that 2 weeks you really don't get that again unless if you do something super specific.
It's like conditioning your body. So for me it's probably like the reason why it feels daunting for me right now is because I still haven't like gotten used to making comics. You know, I still only have 2 comics under my belt. And that's very little. You know, so it's better that's why I'm not starting yet, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, because I've only got 3 plus other narrative projects, and then ironically after doing those 3, I wouldn't say less confident, but I'm more like, fuck, I want even more. I want to have more before I I am comfortable doing that now, but if I had infinite time, I'd be like, fuck. If I had infinite time, money, and patience, I would do like 30 more reasonably small projects.
It's more that it's more that you realize that, oh shit, you know, this is gonna take a bit more than I thought it would, and it would be better if I practiced a bit more.
Yeah, I mean like I was saying before with the example of hiring artists, even recently, just having to convey, I knew that this was going to be difficult, but having to convey like ancient Greek references to an artist, like ancient Greek. Okay, now I have to look up the clothing. Okay, now I have to look up the architecture because obviously, like I know a bit about that stuff. More about the history, but a little less about the certain technical aspects, like what kind of shoes are they wearing. Like I don't know in crazy detail about that, but even just having to do that, and even having to like go through the designs for multiple characters is like, fuck, this is taking like weeks. Like I thought this, like, naively, I was like, oh, it'll probably be like a couple of days. It's like, oh, no, this is like multi-week process for a whole bunch of characters and designs and places, to be fair, but still, like, fuck. In practice, yeah, totally different.
Yeah, again, it's always important to start.
When do you think, like, time-wise, because you said before, like, you made kind of a joke deadline with your friends that it was going to be 12 years when you started it, and it's been 10. Does that mean that it's like 2024 is the aghast year?
Oh no, that was like the 12 years deadline came from fucking like 2019, dude.
Oh shit. Oh, okay. Wait, so it's more than 10 years old.
Yeah, let's hope the world doesn't crumble by then.
Wow, damn. how actively were you working on it that entire time, I guess?
Actually, the most progress I made was in 2017, where I like had the first versions of like the characters I finalized in the narrative actually show up in like my designs. That was like and like the all the like things I wanted for it to change, because it's like going back, I brought this up earlier with the whole like I watched anime and it blew my mind at that point of time, right? So over the years I like inadvertently the thing is that funnily enough I have a pilot for August that was made 10 years ago, like back when the story was really different. And like my art was like very it's like I was like starting out as an amateur artist, like a teenager, who was just like drawing things in his like bedroom and all that stuff, and then that was like I just like stopped working on it because I went to school, right? And I think I've never been more grateful for not continuing than that, because it's like,
oh really?
Yeah, because it's like after that, right? I like after a few years of going to a school and like learning a few more things, I was like, oh, thank God I didn't like, because I actually did pitch it to a webcomic site, with a person, it was another person. I met them it's funny because like it's just a single person who was running the website, and like they knew my cousin, and my cousin had a comic of her own, right? And they really he let me meet this person that he met to put their comic on the website. So when I met them, right, it was in a McDonald's, and I was like pitching them my story, and then he was like, oh, okay, cool, but do you have more, do you know what your story is going to end, what way it's going to end, what are the themes, etc. And I was like, damn, I only have this like first like 7 pages to show you. And then he said like, then I'm sorry, I can't put your comic here yet. Because it's like, I'm not sure if you know what you're doing or like what you want to do. And then I remember being devastated. Like I was like sitting on my bus, right, and I was like sniffling. I was like, oh, I'm not a good artist. I'm never gonna draw. Your life's over. But then I was like, what, 17 at that point of time, right? And then like I have never been more grateful for the guy to reject my shit, because it's like, yeah, bitch, I don't care if my shit is not on your site, man. It's too good for you, babe. But like in all seriousness, right? It's more like I'm grateful that he rejected it, because he knew that I really didn't know what I was doing at that point of time. And it's like I'm grateful, because it's like once I went to learn a bit more and like grow more as a person and all that stuff, because like I also went to the military, so like that changed me a lot as a person. And in fact, like it was the military, right, that where I had a lot of time to myself in the bunk, right, to write and draw and illustrate and think about the story, and then that's when the biggest changes happened. And Then right, cause of that, it's like, yeah, the story changed a lot. It went from like Soul Eater ripoff, right, to like, I was like sitting in my bunk, I was like thinking to myself, it's like, you know, when you're in the military, you kind of like look back on like your younger days, you know, like,
I know. As a military man, I do know a lot about that.
yeah, cause it's like when you're in the military, you like kind of put your life into perspective, right? Cause like if you're in the military, the idea is that yeah, you're going to if anything happens, you have to put your life on the line. You know, and like you kind of think to yourself like about like your earlier days, you know, as a kid, where like there's like less responsibilities and all that stuff, right? And then that made me realize that even before anime, right, there was something that like gave me like inspiration in the first place. Because it's like I was drawing before I even drew anime stuff, and like I loved drawing dinosaurs, but the thing I loved drawing the most was kaiju, you know, which are like Godzilla especially, because like as a kid who loved dinosaurs, right, the moment I laid my eyes on a T-Rex, I fell in love, right? So imagine a huge dinosaur, right, that breathes radioactive fire and has spines and like destroys cities. I was losing my shit as like a 8-year-old kid, and I was like, yo, you know, because like even before meeting Godzilla, I had been watching Ultraman on VCDs my father had bought me, and then I was like, yes. That's what I want to capture, that feeling. Because this is the feeling that brings me comfort when I'm in the military. I was like lying down in my bed and I was like thinking to myself like, I want to feel the way I did again when I was a kid. And I like it was so much wonder, you know, like so little responsibilities, you know, going back to the whole cringe thing, right? It's like, yeah, you know, like it went from like, because like in between these phases, right, the first one was pure cringe, you know, I love anime XD. I'm gonna make Soul Eater.
You're gonna make Soul Eater too.
Yeah, I'm gonna make Soul Eater XD, you know, and then like in between that, right, I'm like, I look at it after like 4 years, I was like, God damn, that's really cringe. I'm gonna make this super serious. It's gonna have all these themes. Okay. It's gonna be about it's gonna be like edgy, it's gonna be like a JRPG. I'm gonna kill God or something, you know, and like etc. You know, and then it's like I go to the military and I look back at that and it's like, damn, that's really depressing. Like, what's this even trying to say? You know, like, it's all just really like, it felt like things where like, I'm trying to be mature, you know, guys, I'm really mature, you know. And then like, I go into the military, it's like, man, I want to feel like a kid again. I just want to feel that sense of wonder that's kind of lost to me. And it's like, that made me like change August a lot. Like, so it like, it went through, it quite literally, like, it holds a special place in my heart because it's like, it grew with me, right? And that's also why I'm a bit apprehensive about putting it on paper, because it's like, like, you're more compelled to be afraid of it receiving some form of backlash, because it's like, for me it's very personal, you know. So I'm doing smaller things first, but going back to it, it's like, it went from like, oh, young teen discovers anime to teenager, it's really edgy, you know. It's like, oh no, I'm not about that anime shit anymore. And then I grow up again, I like go to the military and I'm like, damn, I want to I need some level of wonder. I feel very tired, and like all these like things about growing up and being an adult is like weighing on my mind. I want a story, right? The goal was to create a story that I felt like I would have loved to have watched or needed at my time of like it's not depression, it's more like I wouldn't even say it's a low point. It's more like you're in a position where like your life's not going too well, right? It's like a rough spot in your life. You know? Yeah, so that's
like it's a comfort thing.
Yeah, it's like a primary motivator. Yeah. But at the same time, I want it to be a good story, because like you know, like obviously it has to be good, because like I want it to be something that I can, because like if it's not good, it's not gonna be an effective form of comfort to people, in my opinion. So
if I understand what you're saying that people should be conscripted into the military.
No. It's more like
so that they have time to write their comics.
It's more like it's more like you as a person, you will develop and grow, right? And it's like, don't be too worried of like, oh damn, I'm 20, you know, it's too late. No, you know, it's more like, now you're 20, you still got like what, maybe like 50 years.
But imagine if you were like conscripted into the military, and then, you know, like for 10 years, you're gonna come out with the best story ever. You know, if you're
So
stationed
true,
in
so true.
Siberia,
I agree with you.
you don't talk to anyone for
Yeah,
8 years.
yeah.
Actually, maybe if you're like put a gulag, actually might be
Yeah,
that's
you,
like
you become
that's the
you
real
become,
grind
yeah,
set.
you become a Zen Buddhist. You
Yeah.
just sit underneath a tree and meditate, and then like
Yeah.
the best story you create Avatar: The Last Airbender 3 or something. I don't know.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what Buddha did, right? He went
Yeah,
under the
so true. Yeah.
he went under the body tree for whatever it was,
Yeah, and
7 years, and he comes out. And he's like, "Bruh, I've got like my world building is fucking
Yeah,
sorted, dude."
I'm gonna
fucking-
drop the hottest fire you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's like as a 14-year-old, right? I'm glad I didn't release that story because I haven't experienced life very much, and I was like,
Yeah.
Soul Eater, you know. And then as a 16-year-old, I'm also very glad I didn't release my story because I didn't experience life very much, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh damn, the world's terrible, and then like
Yeah.
20 years old, it's like I'm also glad I didn't release it yet. So it's like, yeah,
Yes.
you know, it's like finally, you know, it's shaping up to be something I want, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
at the very least, it's like any changes that are made, right, are not like drastic changes. You know, that's when you know where like you already like kind of
Yes,
like know what you want
yes.
already. Because it's like between the first two, right, it's like a huge drastic change. The first one is like
Yeah.
Soul Eater. The second one is like AG. The third one is like, okay, it's a huge change again. But then every change I've had after this, right, has been
It's
served
smaller
the
and
same
smaller.
narrative. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a very similar experience down to I mean, like, I wouldn't say because it's weird because it's kind of weird that I've made this. I started creating it at the time I did because at the time I was watching a lot of like fairly pretentious like European films or whatever. And I was getting really into like art film, but then at the same time I was becoming really fascinated, like I guess like structurally with stuff like Avatar, The Last Airbender, not the James Cameron one. And so I basically, I made something that I wouldn't say it was exactly like an Avatar knockoff, but it had many of the same kind of like, it had that kind of Bildungsroman kind of story structure, hero's journey kind of thing going on. But I had a similar thing where I had quite a particular like pessimistic worldview about okay, everything's collapsing and you know there's no morality and it's all doom and gloom and we're fucked and da 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 da. And that was like kind of my like message in the narrative was like, I'm gonna make a thing about how it's all fucked basically. And now that's almost like, that's just a perspective within the narrative. It's still like a valid perspective for characters to have given the circumstance, but it is almost a joke perspective in a way, or it's almost not exactly like taken seriously in a sense, which is ironic. You know, it's evolved beyond that.
It's that scene in Smiling Friends. You're like, we're gonna make all the people frown. It's like, hey, no, please don't kill me, please don't kill me.
Yeah. All the nihilists.
Yeah.
When they get threatened.
Yeah.
No, exactly. It was it was going Rick and Morty mode before being like, wait.
Yeah, it's the same thing here. You're like, you just like have like some rough spots and it's like, oh no, like but then like one day it's like you come back to it later and it's like, maybe life wasn't so bad. I'm still alive, I'm still here.
Yeah. Or it's definitely like I needed to read a whole bunch of other stuff that actually like dealt with the issue that I was like actually dealing with. And now it's just ended up being way more interesting.
Yeah.
And less embarrassing. It would have been very embarrassing to release
because
at
it's
that
like,
time.
Like if you want to make your world feel like it's being lived in with people, right? You cannot solely focus on one perspective.
Especially if you're trying to create a narrative that is like trying to really distinctly illustrate a very particular thing about the world that is basically just your opinion. It's kind of like
like that's the worst way to do it because that's basically just creating a political cartoon on a newspaper.
You're like,
exactly. Look, I portrayed you as the soy jack and I am the Chad. You lose.
Exactly.
No, you're like, there's some like comics I've seen where like they do that, right? And it's like painfully like obvious. It's like, oh dude, are you not embarrassed?
Well, even because I've been it's funny, like the sacrifices I make. I've just been reading like Naruto for maybe the last 2 months. It's taking ages because I'm like reading it in Japanese, and so it's like a bit slower. And while I will say that the manga is actually like, I am very impressed by the art and so on. It actually is very impressive in a lot of ways. The constant obsession with friendship and like people having tragic backstories and kind of that kind of worldview, or that kind of, and I know it's like literally for like babies. Well, is it even for babies? Like adult men are into it.
I think we're gonna have to cut out this part. So.
You gotta cut that shit out. Yeah, no, I mean honestly, I don't mind having that opinion. Who cares? Like I actually do. I do respect large swathes of it. I would say it's mostly when I guess, to get specific, it's when you start getting into like the post-pain arc stuff that it really like on multiple levels starts to like fall apart for me. And I think that that's actually not a particularly controversial opinion. Like I don't think people are huge on that. I think most people look at it like it. Yeah, I think it. I mean, it had been going for like 10 years at that point. I don't know if I could write something that went for.
Yeah, like
it's impressive. To be fair, but even with that, even when that is still like working as a narrative, I still find that kind of thing quite obnoxious, where it's just like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's all about friendship. It's all about, I don't know, whatever the fuck that they're talking about. It's all, everyone has to be redeemed, and it's like a very particular, it's not exactly like propaganda, but it's not as interesting as it potentially could be. A lot more interesting, I think. And I do get, again, that that's couched within it being, that's kind of a thing that Shonen Jump is into. I guess they like having that I forget what their motto is, but they have a particular motto to do with like friendship and trust or something.
It's Datebayo, baby.
Datebayo. So fun. I don't even know what the fuck that means, honestly. Like seriously, I know he's said it probably about 10,000 times.
It's believe it, baby.
It's translated oddly as believe it, but it is a really weird, because like date is actually like quite an like antiquated sentence ending. Like it's really, I've read like an explanation of it, but it is really just like a vocal tick, because his mom says some, like she has some similar vocal tick, like datene or some shit like that, some like female version of it basically. Anyway, so that's just the get all the Naruto fans like wanting to like come to my house and, you know, use all the kill you in your sleep no jutsu.
Just get like shadow clones.
Yeah.
Go get dogpiled.
Yeah, just get dogpiled. Yeah, that's what they do on Twitter. They just go and then fucking
you get reshelled. You get reshelled by the shadow clones.
But the thing is, they can't kill me, because I need to have my own like redemption arc or whatever. I've got like a tragic backstory, and I'm gonna get like a, what people call like talk no jutsu. Like every character is just defeated in like some kind of diplomatic session by fucking Naruto, who somehow has like speech level 100 to convince people who like lifelong terrorists to be like, you know what, you're right. Friendship
is magic.
Is magic or whatever. Right. I guess I shouldn't kill like the entire world or whatever the fuck.
I guess the point to make more like is that like you kind of just don't want your story to rub off as like a lecture to your readers.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to like respect your audience. Like I've not read Naruto, so I can't like vouch for it. So please don't shoot me. Please don't shoot me. There are examples of stories that I've seen, and this one I'm very comfortable on shitting on.
Yeah.
It starts with an R and ends with a Y, and there's 2 letters in between.
I just what could that possibly be?
Shit. Oh, but tune in next time
Rudy.
on Ooh, but like it's like
similar,
it's one of those things where like you kind of have to just make sure that for me, I guess it's like there has to be some level of like engagement from your audience. Like you don't want to like spell things out straight for them, you know. You don't want to like, you don't like to be lectured, right? Like you don't like to be like a parent, you know, telling the child like, oh, you know, like you can't do that, you know, it's mean. Okay, it's more like, hey, child, look at that. Think about it. You know?
Yeah.
I think that's
like
better.
I think the best stories tend to create a certain kind of situation in the world, or a certain kind of mood, and the author ideally is kind of neutral on that. Like, they're almost creating a premise that is almost amoral in a sense. Like for instance, if you have Avatar, the premise of the world being that there is an avatar, there's people who can, you know, manipulate these elements, there are these countries, but that obviously is not in itself, like, you're as a creator saying, okay, this is how the world is in this world, but you're not really trying to make some implicit statement about, oh, actually, we need, in our culture, we need a person
fucking
to
the zombie meme, right, where it's like, maybe we really are the monsters, TM.
yeah.
You know, it's like, and the narrative like doesn't like make an effort to like at least like show the good in people or something. Like, that's like usually a meme that people always like to bring up. You're like in fucking Left 4 Dead 2, I think there's like a wall where like they're like there's a wall where people like the survivors like scribble shit, right? And like someone says something along the lines of like,
maybe we are the monsters. No,
TM.
actually,
and then everybody starts like telling him to like shut up. You know, like kill. You're like fucking like dropping like LTG like low tier god speeches on him on the like wall. They quite literally created a message board in a like doomsday bunker. It's great. But like it's like you like the reason we bring this up is like for us it's like, for me it's like I made like this like incredibly edgy like anti like religion like kill God TM thing, right?
Oh really? It was like a JRPG.
And then
I'm still at that stage since my whole thing is about the death of the gods.
I met a person, right, and that changed my perspective on the whole thing. You know, like it made me realize that like, yeah, you know, like I'm just looking at this from a perspective where I refuse to listen to anyone else.
Was that man Jesus Christ? Or?
No, it wasn't. It was a girl.
Damn.
But like it's not a person that I like. It's not a person I'm close to or anything. It's more like a experience that I had where I was like, I realized that like, maybe I'm not the only one who's going through tough times. You know, and then that made me really change my perspective. You know, and it's like you really don't want your story to become a mouthpiece, because if it's just a mouthpiece, right, then where's the engagement from your audience? You know, you're just lecturing them, right? You're not letting them think. You're just like dumping all your
you're either
frustration on them.
You're either propagandizing people who don't agree with you, or you're basically like masturbating people who do agree with you. So it's kind of, I'm not really interested in like jerking
that's
1,000 people off.
I don't think that's like a great way to tell a story, I guess. But you know, all these things are subjective. You know, people say it's subjective, whatever. You know, maybe this is a controversial opinion to have, but personally, I think that it's like, everything's subjective, right? But like that doesn't necessarily mean that like you shouldn't be aiming for an audience, even if like, because it's like at the end of the day, you should be like aiming for a certain group of people. Like you have to know your demographic when you're creating your narrative. You know, it's like, obviously everyone's gonna have different tastes. You know, and like that might bother you and be like, you're like, oh damn, I need to please this person and I need to please that person. What if this person says this and what if this person says that? It's like, at the end of the day, you're writing your story. You should just know, you should aim to make people who you feel will appreciate your story, right, feel appreciated as well.
So I'm making something, I guess, that I would enjoy, but that statistically I know that I'm not particularly going to be unique, and that I'm going to have I'm going to fit probably a particular archetype, and that presumably, just realistically, in the world, there must be other people who would also like this. Unless if I'm making some, like, I don't know, like, if I was making super specific, like, fetish porn or something, and then it's like, wow, who else is going to get into that? But if I'm making something that's reasonably, not generic, but, you know, at least conforms to, you know, cultural norms, then it's probably going to have some kind of audience. And then if I think it's good, then it's probably going to be able to spread probably slightly beyond that audience. Or they're going to really get into it, and you're going to get like everyone in that niche or whatever. Yeah,
for me, it's like now in the current state of the story, right, that I wrote, right, it's like thinking about the audience, right, it's like yeah, this is for kaiju nerds like me. I fucking love kaiju
Right.
monsters. I like tokusatsu. I love Kamen Rider. I love Ultraman. I love Gamera. I love all these things, and I like anime also. And it's like it's all these like combination of very different things that I like. Right? It's like this is a story made for me that I'm sharing with everyone else.
Yeah, yeah. But it's funny because I mean there are lots of things that I'm into that are not like things that I can, appreciate that I'm not exactly like fans of necessarily, you know what I mean? Like there's like I'm just trying to think of an example of this, but like I don't know, I don't watch a huge amount of like Chinese kung fu movies, but like Hong Kong kung fu movies, but it's like I like a bunch of the like, Jackie Chan stuff or whatever, or like Enter the Dragon or whatever, or like I'm not like addicted to like I don't know like silent films, but there's a bunch of like silent films I like. So you don't actually have to necessarily be like a total fan of a genre to be able to like actually access it and enjoy it or whatever.
Yeah, like for me, it's like I think if your passion will rub off on into your work, it'll just rub off onto others. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people who are watching Evangelion, right, have no,
Yeah.
not say no clue. Like I think because I guess this is like an anecdotal experience, right? But when I look at people online discourse on Evangelion, right, a lot of the people always like to push this thing about like, oh, Arnold hates otaku, and it's like, no, with the reason why like I'm bringing this up is because like going back to it's like I'm a nerd who likes kaiju, right? And Arnold is also a huge otaku, like and like it's not even like explicitly something that you will notice until someone points that out, because like going back to it, it's like these things are references that you only spot, right, if you have been into the genre, which is why like going back to like what you mentioned, right, it's like like it's not going to bar entry for you to enjoy the story, because as long as like it's good, right, or like the passion rubs off onto people, right, whether or not they are fans, right, they'll like it. And in fact, like it's going to probably be their best gateway into becoming a fan of these things. Like with Evangelion, it's like incredibly inspired by Ultraman in particular, and like a lot of other shows that he watched, like Space Runner Ideon, and all this like
Battleship Yamato and
all this like stuff that he loved when he was like a young man, and like it's like
that's like if you see that early Gainax like Daikon 4, I don't know if you've seen that, but that's like
then so like
all of the stuff they're into.
So like going back to it, it's like at the end of the day, it's like I'm very sure that like maybe 80% of the people watching Evangelion have no idea what the hell Ultraman is, but they still enjoy it.
Yeah, probably.
And like
at the end of the day, for sure. Like I don't know fucking anything about that, and like
at the end of the day, it's
like
like if there's a lot of passion put into your work, I think you'll rub off onto people.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking like what do you call it? Like tons of people are into for instance, like Sangatsu no Lion is like very highly regarded, but like how many people like actually play shogi or whatever?
Yeah,
like, really not that many people play shogi.
Yeah,
or understand the rules.
If you make it interesting enough, people will get into it. It's like there's always a start for everyone. It's like no one's going to know they like Godzilla until they watch Godzilla and then decide for themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's honestly what I'm hoping to do with like something that is like, I mean, there are lots of like ancient Rome things, for instance. Lots of people know the whole, fall of Julius Caesar, fall of the Roman Republic stuff, whatever. That's like pretty famous, well-known event. But like the Peloponnesian War, while it is famous, like if you asked 1,000 people on the street, I really feel like it's going to be like 1% know it, maybe 2%. I don't really know, but it's really not that well known. So for me, it's funny, like I'm making something where it's like, hopefully, and also statistically, the vast majority of the audience are not going to know what I'm actually basing the story on, basically. It's not, entirely lifted wholesale, but it is very, inspired by. So it'll be interesting because it's like, will people have that feeling of being like, almost that weird example, but almost like that Squid Game effect where people go like, oh, I didn't know I wanted a show like this. You know what I mean? Like until you have it, you don't know, like, oh yeah, that is kind of a good
Yeah.
idea. Like, I obviously, and it's not really original. It's basically just a Japanese battle royale death game kind of thing. But you know, maybe they didn't realize that they wanted it with the aesthetics it has, or you know, whatever. It came at a good time. Hopefully, people don't realize that they actually want, you know, ancient Greek set thing or whatever, like that kind of thing. And because you can't base that on like, I have to appeal to the. I've talked to people about this. With like, are you thinking of trying to appeal to like the ancient Greek fans or whatever? I'm like, the fuck? Like, do you think with Attack on Titan they were like, are you trying to appeal?
Are you going to appeal to the giant
to the
naked
existing
man?
Titan, the Titan community
the Titan
or whatever?
Community, yeah.
All the Titans sitting around reading like tiny fucking
the
manga.
giant naked man fans.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I
it's
guess,
like
yeah.
you won't have to like for me it's like, yeah, you know, like thinking about your audience is good, you know, but at the same time it's like a lot of these things is like you don't really like have to be super like concentrated about pleasing fans or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand. Like, it's funny because I have a what would you say, person I know who is more interested in, does sort of marketing, sort of business, entrepreneurial, like related stuff, and they're always very bothered when I tell them that I don't have like a very specific audience in mind for Aegis. They're like, what do you mean? You gotta be targeting these people and da. And it's like, look, I don't fucking know what it's gonna be like until I make it, and I'm not gonna like look at statistics and be like, oh yes, 18 to 36-year-olds also like this manga, and I should make it more like that. Like, I'm not gonna make creative decisions based on that information. And obviously, I get to make that call because I'm like funding the thing, and it's my like brainchild. I do get if you're like, you know, Shonen Jump, and you have to know that it's going to be within a specific genre and it's appealing to your very specific demographic, and if you have stockholders and you have, you know, especially with films, if you have a lot of money behind stuff, I do understand, like, I do get the business side of that you're going to have to, you know, people are investing lots of money into your film. They want at least a decent, you know, chance of getting their money back plus extra. But I hate that. I hate that so much, honestly. I understand it, but it's like, fuck. I really don't. I don't want to make those changes because, like,
for me, it's like
Daryl in Las Vegas watched a screener of my pilot and said that it needs less women or some shit.
Yeah. For me, it's like more like an inadvertent thing, you know, where like by consequence, it's like, because I'm writing a story for myself, it's going to please. The aim is to also please people like me, and people like me are kaiju fans, you know. So
exactly.
So
that's the better way to think of it, I think. Yeah, where it's like, if it's pleasing, if you know, like, for instance, I know that I'm not making some super fucking you know, abstract art piece that's only going to be appreciated by like 3 people. Like, it's, you know, what I'm making is like reasonably accessible, hopefully, you know. Yeah,
like at the end of the day, it's more like a byproduct, you know. It helps because it's like when you say an audience, you're really thinking of like people like that you want to please, that are like, sometimes it's you know, and sometimes it's like there's an aim for it's because it's like if you're like us and you're just writing the story because you want to create something that you would like, it's like inadvertently then the audience is people like you are. But then there's the inverse case where it's like these you're probably like trying to sell a product, right? You know, then that's when you really have to think more about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I feel like also, like, the ultimate thing is, how would I put this? Without sounding like elitist, like, I feel like lots of people are not capable of creating something truly brilliant. And I feel like I don't know exactly what the ratings would be, but there are not many 9 out of 10 stories that come out every year. You know what I mean? Like, just recently, there's a show. I'm not sure if it came out this year. It might have come out late last year. It's called Severance. You know, just a fantastic show. Like one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. And after you finish that and you go back to kind of watching other stuff, you're like, man, nothing this year is probably really going to be as good as that. maybe one other thing, perhaps. And so you really have this real cream of the crop. Like, let's say that's like a 9 out of 10 or whatever. I don't know. You know, just being like that little bit above those other things, whatever, the other sea of 8 out of 10s, and then the greater sea ocean of, 7 out of 10s. Most people I notice who at least are more obsessed, more bothered by marketing and demographics are trying to peddle something that is of lower quality. And I feel like it's basically a lot of the time, not always, but I do feel in a sense that it is like coping. It's a cope with the fact that they're not creating something that is truly brilliant. And that truly brilliant thing would, not in a sense market itself, because everything needs marketing to some degree, but how do I explain that? That it could stand on its own and not necessarily be universal, but it could sort of transcend some kind of, I don't know, it almost have that kind of a cultural phenomenon kind of thing going for it, I guess.
Thanks for having me as a guest. To reiterate everything I've mentioned in the podcast, one, it's important to start. Just start. Like, don't be afraid of cringe. Don't be afraid of criticism. Don't be afraid of not being successful. It's important that you do it because it will allow you to gauge yourself. It's important to do it because you have experience points. So just you the audience, and me, amateur artist, who's like got his own set of experiences that's like I'm still developing, just as you are, right? I want to tell you all that you all are in the same boat that I am, and many other people are in the same boat as you are. And it's important to just do it, just try something, just try it, It's art. Art is like an explosion, it's just like boom, it just happens. All right, that's a quote. Art is an explosion. It's a quote from like my a sculptor. I forgot his name. I think his name was like something Taro. He made the like sun Tower of the Sun thing. But like going back to it, a lot of these things, they'll just happen by happenstance. That's why it's like an explosion. Like
what you're gonna love really... is that's also a quote from a character in
Naruto. I know.
Yeah. Is that the joke?
Yeah, I have a feeling he might have been inspired by that.
He probably inspired by that.
But like, because he's a Japanese sculptor.
Yeah. Oh, okay, I see.
But going back to it, like a lot of these things are happenstance. Don't be afraid, because a lot of these things, they'll just happen naturally if you start. But it's always important to start, because if you don't start, then you don't have the fuse to light the explosion.
Well, where can people find you actually?
You guys can find me on twitter.com/Cynga. There'll probably be a link in the description, but fair warning. You have a lot of
he's horny.
Yeah, I'm super horny. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
I post a lot of like not safe for work art that I draw. Not say a lot. Like occasionally I draw not safe for work art, and I draw
a decent amount.
And I do like indie comics, and like the part that's the warning part is that I retweet a lot of not safe for work. Yeah. So if you all want to find me there, you all can just feel free to
be warned at your own discretion.
At your own discretion. You're gonna like get flooded like by like 20 mating breast tweets a day or something. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I really appreciate it.
And that's the interview in full. Please let me know if you enjoyed this. Was this terrible? Was this okay? Should I ask better questions? Should I ask less questions? Should I speak more? Should I speak less? If there are other people I should talk to, if you want to talk about your manga, if you have a great manga, if you have some interesting experiences, if you would have insight, then just like DM me basically on Twitter. Yeah, thanks and goodbye.